call the meeting to order of the regular council meeting of the City of Cross Lake, Monday, October 12th, 2015, at 7 p.m. at the City Hall in Cross Lake, Minnesota. We'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll accept a motion to approve the additions to the agenda. There should be in front of you, highlighted in yellow.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion Wessel, second Hecox. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The consent calendar. All items here listed are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be acted on by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a citizen or a council member so requests. I'll accept a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Go ahead, Brad.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion Nelson, second Wessels. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll open the public forum. No action will be necessarily be taken on any of these issues that are brought before us. If appropriate, the issues can be placed on a future agenda of the City Council. The speaker must state their name and address, and we would prefer that you'd limit your conversation to 3 minutes. Anybody got anything they would like to address or bring before the council in the public forum? I don't know how long we should wait. Okay, we'll close the public forum. The mayor's report. Got a couple items tonight. One is I would personally like to recognize the volunteers in our community. It occurred to me the past couple of weeks, without the volunteers that we have amidst us, we would be hard-pressed to accomplish all that we do. We have service clubs, churches, business community, volunteers, people that serve on committees for the city and other operations, and I would just like to extend our thanks to the volunteers in our community. It became very apparent during Cross Lake Days and a few other things that have gone on that our volunteers are critical to the success of this community, and I hope that's all right with the rest of you council members. Also, Ted Strand has served this community for an unbelievable amount of time, 15 years, I believe.
Yes, sir.
This way I can keep the headset on. Come on up here.
Oh, okay.
Ted, I'm not going to unwrap it. That's up to you. I want to thank you, both from the city and personally. You're a great guy. You do a great job. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Ted.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, council.
Thanks, Ted.
City Administrator's Report. Dan Vogt.
Mr. Chairman and members, perhaps we'll tag team on this one between the city attorney and myself regarding the LG 214 premises permit application from the Merrifield Marathons, Inc. for pull tabs at the Cedar Chest. You did receive a information memo regarding lawful gambling from the League of Minnesota Cities in your packet. We further researched this matter. Your current city code, section 6-21A, says that no more than one licensed organization may conduct lawful gambling on any premise in which there's a gambling site. However, we also found out that in 2007 and 2008, you have a couple of establishments that were issued two gambling permits for the same site. So what we talk about with that is that you should amend your ordinance to bring what's going on currently into the city code, so it's legal from the city code standpoint. State law says that the number of pull tab dispensing devices located at any premises, permitted premises is limited to 3. So the state law allows 3. Your current code says 1, although you have a couple of establishments that have 2 already. That was done back, like I said, in 2007, 2008. The current regime that's in the office wasn't part of that, so we don't know exactly how that happened. But the city attorney has looked at it as well and has a couple of highlighted areas in a proposed ordinance that would straighten this out, I guess, from the standpoint of the current permitting process.
Well, yeah, first of all, I just took out the limit on number of pull tabs and just reference the state statute. So it'd be 3 unless you think that's wrong. But then the other 2 things that were kind of brought up last meeting that I've highlighted are, I'm just leaving them blank for council discussion so we can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We'll get rid of that 1 per bar rule that's in the current code. And then here's the redraft of the ordinance. Most of it's all boilerplate. The 2 areas that matter probably are what % of gambling profits, if any, should go to a local charity. And the next question is, well, we got to define local charity. And then up above in the very top there, the actual nonprofit, do they need to be located in the city proper, Crow Wing County? Don't require anything as long as they give a certain percentage back to local charity? Question. Those are things that you guys would need to flesh out, and we'd have a new draft.
Brad, is this page you're showing us currently in our city code?
No,
With the exception of the highlighted pieces?
No, this is a redraft. The current code has a lot of just boilerplate, and the main problem was that it said that it only could have, well, if it's a problem in your eyes, I guess, but right now it says we can only have 1 pull tabs per bar. It's in the current ordinance, and it had a bunch of other stuff that really doesn't apply. I just want to be able to reference the state statute and not have our own set of rules. But then currently, I'll just read it to you. The licensee shall distribute its net profits, at least 50% of said profit shall be spent within the city or benefiting persons within the city community. And of course, it doesn't define what city community is, so I think we'd like to probably define that a bit better, and now it says 50%. We could stick with 50% or go to a lower percentage or not require that. And secondly, it'd be my preference to, as I've tried to draft it in this way here in 2 spots really, I think there's 2 different ways to distinguish what's local. So one is, do we care where the nonprofit is from? So for example, if it's a city's nonprofit, but if they promise to give X% back to Cross Lake, is that okay by you, or do you want to be more of a local charity, number 1? And number 2, what's that percentage that would go back to local charity, and the part that goes back to charity, does that need to be restricted to the city proper, or the whole county, or 10 miles within the city, or whatever it'd be nice to have some more specifics to it so that city staff knows how to, review these licenses and see if they're compliant or not. Because right now, there's not enough, reading the current ordinance, you'd have no way to interpret what city community means. I mean, who knows?
This is interesting. There are 3 issues here, is that right? 1, sharing the proceeds with the city or a designated charity. 2, the applicant usually was within the city or maintains an office here, which would not be, neither one of these would necessarily be true at this point. And what was the other one? There was another piece to this. But anyway, as I read through this, the current applicant is the Merrifield Marathon Snowmobile Club, which maintain trails through our community. How do we, if we're looking at item 4 on here, G4, how do we account for things, services, rather than monies? Question.
Well, as long as you clarify your intent, I can redraft this, I think, in a way to capture that. And you're right, you brought up a fourth point that I failed to mention. We don't do it now, but last meeting, we did talk about charging a city fee of some type.
Yep.
In addition to, so many percent of the net profits have to go back to local charity. So that's another point that we could have in the ordinance, and I don't have it in the current draft. So other than the standard license fee, there's no extra fee for charitable gambling that we're asking for. But we could. It was talked about last meeting, and I forgot to mention that.
That's all right. Comments?
I think snowmobile groups and such that do work in the community and bring people here, such as a valuable thing for the city, even though they're not located here. We talk about in the EDA meetings on occasion about the greater Cross Lake area, not just Cross Lake, but we serve a lot of communities and we want them to come here and you know, so we got a lot of neighboring communities that we want to play nice with, I should say. So do they have to live here? That's one of the things you're asking. If their organization has to be here, I don't think they should. For instance, Merrifield Marathons. And then percentage, if I'm not quite clear on that, Brad, do we already have that part in there, a percentage of their
Right.
profits has to come here?
Like I said, right now it says 50%, so that's one question, is what's the percentage? And secondly, right now it just says it has to be spent within the city or benefiting persons within the city community, and it doesn't define what that means. So it'd be better to try to give me a bit more meat on what you really mean by benefiting local, and then I can try to draft that in a way that's a little bit more specific so that we can actually review an application, and they have to give us monthly reports and so on, and we can actually confirm, yeah, it is getting spent locally or not, and what does that mean to you?
And I would say number 4 on there, that if it's already at 50%, and just say, for instance, we leave it there, adding another tax onto that, or another percentage that they want going directly to the city, I think would be, I don't think it'd be good to do that.
Does our current ordinance say 50%? It does already?
Yeah.
Does it say may or shall?
Unless regulated by state law, and in the event said licensees distribute net profits, at least 50% shall be spent. So
Oh, shall
how we,
be
in-
spent.
on local,
Okay.
but then it doesn't define local, so I don't know how you'd even enforce it if somebody didn't.
What about leaving it vague?
You know, I'm looking at this, and if you look at page 14, it says that we can impose a tax, but the tax must only raise the revenue necessary to cover the cost of regulating. I have no idea how much money we're talking about. I think the people that do this work are volunteers, and it benefits many of our communities. And I don't know who in the city is going to do this. I don't know if anybody does it now, looks at any of this stuff. Do we, Shar? Anybody look at, other than issue a permit, do we get involved in checking everybody? I mean,
Where the money goes. The Lions submit a biannual report to the city on,
on their own, they just do it?
well, the ordinance requests that.
Okay.
I don't know, I have not seen one from, like, the youth hockey ever. And they've been doing pull tabs here since like 2004 or 5.
I just don't know that it's a big deal. I kind of,
Like,
I
so
think
one,
we
one
can
position
examine
could be, if you just say that, if they're located within Crow Wing County, for example, maybe you decide that's good enough, and we're not gonna sit and look up where the money's spent. But I don't know, I mean, those are two different ways to regulate it. And we just need direction so we know how to process these things. And another point is, we're hoping, nobody's really arguing about this, so I assume everyone agrees up to 3 in one bar is fine, and let's change the ordinance to make that work. But, so that's what it says now, unless somebody disagrees with that.
I'd be okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
Okay with that, yeah.
I've been thinking, since we brought this up at the last meeting, snowmobile, hockey, obviously the Lions, we all love the Lions, and they give, back so much to the community, but if it were my business, I wouldn't want you telling me who can be in there and who can't be in there, but I think from Brad's standpoint, you need some kind of a framework, so if you're in Crow Wing County, you're a nonprofit, you're charitable, we don't need to take any of the snowmobile club's money, I don't think that's all right, we don't need to take the hockey association's money, they're all doing good things, all of those things benefit our community, keep it simple. But obviously, maybe we don't want somebody coming in from, out of town, so to speak, right? But, we're talking about the snowmobile club that grooms trails that access our community, we're talking about the hockey youth group, and obviously we're, discussing the Lions, it's all good. Keep it as simple as we can, but
Less complicated.
less complicated, yeah. My comment.
So instead of within the city, we should expand that to say county.
County, is that a motion? Good motion.
And again,
Let's solve this a piece at a time.
Yep.
You want to make that a motion?
yeah, I would say that, both from the standpoint of where their base operations come from, and also percentage that they contribute.
Well, let's just do the Crow Wing County part first, and then we can, determining the percentage that they contribute is difficult. Brad touches on a point. We touch on the point that the marathons groom trails. I don't know how you value all that. So, let's make sure that we get the first one approved, and then let's come back and talk about reporting and the percentage that they,
Well, I guess what I was looking at doing is to expand both of those that are in yellow for Crow Wing County, but I'm not getting to the percentage in this motion. I'm just getting to, they don't have to be in Cross Lake, just as long as they're in Crow Wing
Right.
County, and they have to share with the county, not necessarily Cross Lake. But the percentage, you're right, let's do that different. I'm just saying, let's expand those two definitions to include a broader area, Crow Wing County versus Cross Lake.
Maybe if I could insert some words there, what if we just said that up above it's Crow Wing County and down below, they just have to show that they have you can use the right verbiage you want, but they have to prove to us that one of their significant missions is to serve some nonprofit purpose in Crow Wing County. Not maybe a percentage, but just, we wouldn't want someone located here that their goal is to help kids in Haiti or something. It's, they have to also have a mission. It's two things. They have to be in Crow Wing County, and as long as they show part of their mission is to serve nonprofit issues in Crow Wing County, is that good enough, or do you want to have a percentage to it? Because as soon as we have a percentage, now we have to
Audit.
Measure.
try to measure it somehow.
I think Crow Wing County's fine.
Does that work?
Whatever percentage they're spending,
Okay.
And the 3 per, or reference state law.
I
3 per
would
site.
remind you, gentlemen, that one of the incentives for people to play pull tabs in our community is that they justify in their mind that it benefits the community, this community, Cross Lake. And so now, all of a sudden, we're talking about, you can come here and take funds and distribute them to anybody in Crow Wing County. You can do that, it's just the way, it hasn't been done that way before, and so that'd be a significant change.
Well, Mr. Roy, I think like with youth hockey, for instance, that's over in Breezy Point. So arguably, you could say that doesn't benefit Cross Lake, except that I know there's a lot of kids in Cross Lake who are in youth hockey.
And
So
they're benefited by that.
And so they are, but technically, the money's going there, it's not coming here, just that our kids are going there to enjoy it.
Right. If
So-
you were in the city, you'd have, Hopkins would have his youth hockey, Minnetonka, and there you might want to regulate a little tighter. But we just don't have hockey associations in every city.
Yeah.
It's kind of might even be a regional thing, I don't
You
know.
guys.
I mean, I know a lot of parents who have or have had kids in youth hockey over there, and they live here in town. And so I guess, well, just to make it simpler, let's do the first motion, let's the top one, change that to Crow Wing County. That's my motion. We gotta have a second yet.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right.
Motion Wessel, second Nelson to make sure that the people who hold licenses for gambling here in Cross Lake are resident here in Crow Wing County, and that's the change. Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, what do you want to do about the services, benefits, and so forth that are rendered by these activities?
Have we changed the Part 3 groups to, from 1 to 3 yet? Should I do that one real quick too and get that? I'll make the motion, we change it from 1 to 3. Let's get that nut down the trail.
I'll second that.
Motion Wessels, second Schrupp to allow up to 3 operations to, 3 organizations to have gambling operations in one facility, one business.
That's, by the way, that's
Is that all right?
compliant with state law allows that, right? Okay,
I
just
amend that.
point, yep.
That's fine.
Yep.
State, according to state law?
Mhm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Now
Now we're getting down to the tough one. I did not realize that we had in our own ordinances the fact that if you conducted any type of gambling here in Cross Lake, that 50% of your profits had to be donated back to the city, or I would like to say, to the benefit of citizens and the city. The hockey program does benefit many citizens in our community, so I initially had a little issue with that. I don't today, because I've come to understand hockey is not cheap. It wasn't cheap 30 years ago when my kids were playing it either. Comments, questions? What do you want to do with that one?
Off the
Because-
cuff, I would say let's enforce it as laxly as we've been doing.
That's
So,
what?
let's just enforce it as lax as we've been doing.
I think the current, I think the current language is actually pretty good, it's just the percentage questions. Right now, it says it has to be spent within the city or benefiting persons within the city community. So I think that captures the Breezy Point, the kids go to Breezy, but they benefit us, so I think that language works, it's just right now it says 50%, and I don't know how you enforce that.
We have a gentleman step forward. Name?
Hi, my name is Howard Miller.
Hi, Howard.
I'm the president of the Merrifield Marathons Snowmobile Club. So I thought I'd be here to offer our insight into what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it, if that's appropriate. One of the things that we're attempting to do is to put a bridge over Pelican Brook. I don't know if you're familiar with where that is, but it's about a mile south of the Cedar Chest and a mile in. We started this about 18 months ago, under the assumption it was going to be about 60 grand to do that. The reason this bridge is so important is because it's the only link from Brainerd, Baxter, Camp Ripley, anywhere else down there, up here to Cross Lake, and then farther on to northern Minnesota. That's critical. That bridge is the link. Subsequently to when we started, we've had additional issues because there happens to be a striped minnow in that creek. So if we were going to replace the bridge as it sits today and put a framework in the center of the river, we'd have to do an EPA study to ensure that we don't affect that minnow, and that's another 25 grand. So we stopped that idea and we looked at a full span bridge to try to avoid that. Well, that was going to cost us a little bit more. Then just a couple of weeks ago, we got the results back from testing that we did for the support structure on each side of that creek. We had soil borings done and found out that the soil isn't adequate to support the type of structure that we were hoping we could put in, so we got another $25,000. Okay, bottom line, right now, we're looking at about $165,000 for that bridge. That's what connects those snowmobile trails up here to Cross Lake. Now, I don't know if that's benefiting the community or not, but if that bridge isn't there, those snowmobiles have no other place to go except in the road ditches. to get here and to go wherever else they might go. We have applied and received a federal grant of, I lost it now, I think 42,000 or something like that. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to complete the bridge in the time to obtain that grant now because of the delays and the different changes that have occurred. So we're going to be reapplying based on that initial grant, and hopefully now, instead of getting something done this winter, we'll look in the early spring of 2017 is what it's going to look like. Currently, we can still put snowmobiles over that bridge, but we can no longer run our groomer over the bridge. It's deteriorated to that extent. And it's not worth having a groomer at 200 grand apiece fall off the bridge. So we now have to go all the way back around and groom that trail back to the bridge from this direction. That's what we're trying to do, and I think it's a benefit to the entire area. Specifically, it's the route through the trail system today that gets people to Cross Lake. And it's the only route that gets people to Cross Lake. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't know that anybody here is against giving you the permit.
No,
We're trying to figure out how to make this work for everybody.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
okay.
relative to the last issue we're dealing with about what percentage should come back to Cross Lake, that would in some way benefit the community, and I can appreciate that fully. I think $165,000 on a bridge is beneficial to the community, to one extent or another. I'm not sure what your budget is, but that's a big chunk for us to swallow.
Well, it makes me feel a
Takes
lot
years to
better
get
about
there.
Dream Island, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Ole and Sven again.
I'm telling you,
They'll have her done for $500.
And if,
really easy if it wasn't for the government.
in the event you may not be aware of it, we are required through the state gambling rules and regulations to contribute 30% of our revenue towards, various charitable organizations, which we do. And we'd be more than willing to look at whatever charitable organizations are in the Cross Lake area and attempt to accommodate them as long as they're sufficiently, 501c3 corporation. That's what we're restricted to as far as our contributions go.
well, I don't see that the contribution to the community is necessarily limited to outright cash donations, but I would certainly like to entertain some conversation relative to that.
Question,
Yeah.
do we actually even need that number 4 in there? I mean, we issue the permits, so we know who they are, what they're doing, where they're from. They gotta be in Crow Wing County. Do we even need number 4 in there technically?
No, that's one of my questions. We could take it out entirely, or maybe, like I said, the verbiage would just be showing that they have some sort of charitable intent to this area and not put a number to it. And then you review it once a year, and if the word gets out that some group doesn't really focus around here anymore, you could warn them that it's not gonna happen next year unless you change your tune or something, and not,
Renew the permit you're talking about, yeah.
That's what I like. Whether it's hockey, I mean, you're looking at two very avid snowmobilers on this end of the table, so obviously there's no issues. I mean, the value of that club and the grooming of the trails and everything else that they do, benefits us in percentages we can't measure. And just like, nobody's gonna look at the hockey and say that that doesn't contribute something, or obviously the Lions Club, which we all know gives so much. I don't even see the reason for number 4. I mean, we don't have a problem with it. If we ever did, we could change but I don't wanna take that man's money. I don't wanna take a piece of the hockey guy's money. I don't want, they're all contributing to our community in ways that we can't measure.
That's the really key, is how do you measure?
Right, and we
that
don't wanna,
bridge.
How
do you do that?
let's make this as simple as we can.
Yeah.
We love the snowmobile club, we love the hockey club, and we, obviously enjoy everything that the Lions do for us. We don't have an issue. That's my
So
opinion.
taking number 4 out is your motion?
Yes.
What if we just change it, just said if you reside in Crow Wing County, you invest it back in the county?
Yeah, I just don't want to put a dollar
Right,
number
no
on it, and I don't want to
percentages, so you
regulate this
spend it
man's or
in this
anybody
county,
else's
though.
business, and
How
let
about
'em-
what Dave said? Does
yeah,
that
how
work?
about what Dave said?
Yeah, no, you tell me. I mean, if we just simply say, we could put a number forward, just the intent is, basically, it's a local, meaning we're defining that as either city or county. I'm hearing more people say county, and not put dollar figures to it, and just, that one of their intents is to, you know,
For
to
the
help
benefit
out
of the
some
county.
cause in Crow Wing County, or City of Cross Lake, or however you want to define that.
Yep.
And just leave, don't put numbers to it.
What happens if we would say a minimum of 10% or a service to the community or the city of Cross Lake, which they would report on an annual basis? Because that report would be an easy way to let us know where you're progressing on the bridge. Because I think the bridge is a great idea. I don't have any problem with that. And I would hate to see us cripple you by saying, well, you're going to give us a bulk of your profits in cash. You won't get to the bridge. And I don't want to hamper that. And I would just soon give you credit for the bridge, or for at least half of it, you know?
There's a reporting requirement now already, right?
Right,
So
but we-
when we renew these, we'll have a chance to review the report, if they report, and I don't know how, we haven't been very tough on that, because, but, so if we just had that, like Dave just said, that,
The county
just that
would
you're committing to, how'd you say that? Committing to reinvest
Spend it in the county.
in the county.
You know, I would say, you know, I could argue that any percentage you put there, if he does build a bridge, it's a benefit to the city.
Right.
Now, he can put any number on it he wants.
I would you want to make that as a motion, Dave, that we just do it, and then we take out the percentage, just, and it's got to be within Crow Wing County?
Make a motion that we change or add, alter number 4, or add another line item that basically says we're going to require them to spend their money that they make
Oh, I see.
in the county, in Crow Wing County.
I'll second that.
Motion, Schrupp. Second, Wessels. I think I understood that all right. Is there somebody else that wants to talk about this before we, is there another discussion point here?
Aaron Herzog, I live, a citizen living on Tall Timbers Trail. I'm gonna suggest to you that you put a limitation that one organization cannot come in and capitalize the entire city. Now, you've been using the hockey group as an example. The hockey group could come in and promise these establishments, because remember, they have to have the establishments, you know, the establishment want them in there. They promise the business to the establishment, and then they all go with that one. So everything from Cross Lake would go to, let's say, Brainerd Hockey. A few of the families here would profit from that, but many would not.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay? I would profit from more so, or benefit from more so than I would from the hockey. So I'm saying don't allow all of your eggs from the gambling to go into one basket from the community. In other words, each establishment applied for a permit for the same organization. They can only have so many licenses in the city, one organization.
Well, we can regulate that from year to year as we get these
We don't-
applications.
We don't have that limitation now, Aaron.
But do you understand what I'm trying to say, though?
Yeah,
Sometimes I don't say
you don't
it
want-
real clear.
The hockey club to have every establishment in town, excluding the Lions, excluding the
Yes, you want
the Snowmobile Club.
all organizations to be able to share in the
But that-
profits, because they're
that
all
just
going to
comes
go out
from-
different ways,
From these applications that we
benefit
get, we just
different.
have to make sure that we don't do that.
okay?
How do we do that?
Well, as we get the applications, we have to approve them. So if we have 10 applications from one organization and none from anybody else, we got a problem. But we don't have that problem right now. And right now, we've just expanded it so that one organization can have from 3 different clubs. They could have the Lions, the hockey, and the Snowmobile Club in one establishment now.
Can we legally manage that, Brad?
Yes, I do agree that you made it better. For his concern, we just made it better, because now we're allowing up to 3 charities in each bar. Doesn't
In one
mean,
bar, but they can go to the next one and do it again.
well, right, but you're not, I guess I would argue you're not preventing the Lions, for example, if they're in every bar, the Lions could be in every bar too. I mean, it's not, we'll have at least up to 3 in each bar.
See remember what happened at Ox, or Bourbon, sorry? They brought the hockey club in, and because of the rule that we could only have one, that meant the Lions had to get out. And so we caused that problem because we only allowed one. Now with 3, they could actually have both of them still there, and they could actually have them also.
I think there were other things there. They wanted bar bingo, and I don't think the organization that had sponsoring them was capable of doing that. Anyway, you guys okay?
Yep, I'm good.
We have a motion
I seconded. Yep.
been seconded would you restate your motion again? Or Shar, can you help us with that again so we understand?
Changing number 4 to require that organizations spend their proceeds within Crow Wing County.
You guys okay with that? All in favor?
Aye.
I,
All right.
I just want them to order 2 bridges at 165,000. So we can put that across to Dream Island, because that's a hell of a good deal.
Well, maybe you can,
That's all I want. I just want that, I want another one of those bridges at 165.
Let's hire the Merrifield Marathons to build our bridge to Dream Island.
Right.
oh my,
If it holds a groomer, it's gotta be good.
is that like a barber?
We have to prove this.
At the point here, we should have our own raffle to build a bridge.
There you go. City raffle, there you go.
Mr. Vogt,
We have the permit yet to do.
Yep.
we therefore need to approve the Merrifield Marathon's application to hold gambling activities in one of our establishments, and I think it is the Cedar Chest, is that not right?
Yes. Also move.
I'll second.
Motion Wessels, second Nelson. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Item 2 on my report is a memo from October 5th from the Minnesota Department of Revenue regarding boards of equalization, or appeal and equalization. The local board of appeal and equalization must certify in writing to the county assessor by February 1 that at least one voting member at each board meeting has completed the appeals and equalization course in the last 4 years, and that a quorum was present for each board for the previous assessment year. If we don't have a person that is certified, someone needs to, or you're giving it up to the county, and that might be something you want to do too. Frankly, my previous long-term employer to the south of here, the county took it over. I mean, we didn't have anybody that was certified on that 8-member, 8 elected official city council we had, and the county took it over, so it's an option for you. Otherwise, someone needs to be certified, and you have to get that information to the county assessor so they know someone was certified. And if not, you go through the training process as noted here.
When does that have to be in?
February 1, we have to,
All right.
they have
Are
to.
there education courses before that time, Shar?
Yeah,
They're online now.
yeah,
You
it's,
don't have to travel.
yep, it's all online.
Yeah?
Yep.
And I am certified.
We're
Gary's
good.
the only one certified, but if he doesn't attend, then we lose our ability
So
to
Doesn't attend the,
attend the local board.
Board of Review.
That's in April every year, correct?
Gary, we probably need someone to commit to going to school, and will you commit to being at the Board of Review? Or are you gonna be out of town?
No, I should
Well,
be
it's
there.
in
All right.
next spring, so.
It's next spring,
That's- yeah.
February. All right, and then I encourage, it's a really an interesting piece. I encourage any of you who are interested to take the course.
So that's a FYI for you. And then just one other thing, I just wanted to note to the public and yourselves that all the minutes from the early 1900s, I believe, until today, are scanned and will be online this week. So people are able to go back as far as they would like, and I'd like to give kudos to Shar, who has taken responsibility to do that, and it will be all taken care of this week.
Super, thank you,
Good job,
Shar.
Shar.
Thank you.
And we have the online meetings now you can watch on YouTube, and You can still rent the CDs at the library for the older meetings. And so information's there. If somebody's not getting it, they can certainly find it.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. We'll proceed to the commission reports, planning and zoning.
Good evening.
Good evening, John.
The first item that we have on our agenda is the potential changes to the Chapter 26 of the Land Use Ordinance. The memo there, went through the process, public hearing and everything on the 25th of September, and recommended the changes in red be approved here at the city council level. Is that something we need to put up, Brad, or?
Can.
So, I guess if you have any questions, I can go through quickly what we're doing in in Article 11 of Chapter 26, Section 316. We're actually removing that language from Chapter 11, and that's going to be put in place later on in Article 36. So it's just pulling it out of one section, and we're making some changes to it and putting it into another section, or another article. So that is the only change to Article 11. Article 12 are the rural residential district standards, and that is the larger residential areas that are outside of shoreland. To make our language consistent throughout and consistent with what the county has, we recommended, or the Planning Commission recommended, that we change the maximum impervious coverage from 15% to 25%. And that's the only change in Article 12.
John, is that, I would assume that 35, or that 25% impervious coverage number is outside of the 1,000 feet. Is that from any lake?
That's
Is that
correct,
right?
yes. And it will just make it consistent, sir, with all of the residential areas are going to be at 25% impervious maximum,
Outside of the shoreline areas.
inside and outside. They'll both be at 25. We're making the change now. The ones that are outside currently are at 15% maximum. And
Yeah.
we're changing that to 25.
All right, what about the ones on the inside?
The ones that are in shoreland within 1,000 feet, they're at 25% impervious.
Uh-huh.
But isn't it 15 but 25 with a water plan?
Correct. The way that it works now is if you're on any of the lots, once you hit 15% impervious, you're required to do a stormwater management plan. And then you can build over the 15%
With
with
the
that
plan.
plan. Once you hit 20%, then those areas that are in shoreland, we do a shoreline rapid assessment where we look at, do you need to establish a no-mow buffer 10, 15, or 20 feet back from the water's edge to allow infiltration, and so you're not having your lawn mowed right up to the water's edge. So that's the change for 12, is to changing it from 15 to 25%. Article 33 on signs, we're making some changes there and adding in basically multiple business pylon sign language. So similar, you've just recently approved a subdivision just south of Cross Lake Roloff. And they're going to be putting in, ultimately, there's going to be 7 lots there, all commercial. Rather than have 7 big signs right out on County Road 3, the language that we're proposing in here is going to allow them to put one signpost out with multiple business signs on that. Right now, we don't allow off-premise signs, any new off-premise signs. So this would allow for a subdivision like that, a plat, to have an off-premise business sign so that it can hang 6 or 7 businesses signs on that one post instead of not being able to advertise their business out on County Road 3 or wherever it may be. So it's a multi-business pylon sign is what we're adding.
How are you going to keep that less than 100 feet tall?
There is restrictions, and we'll get to that. I'll explain.
Okay, thank you.
The first change is in section 26-863 under administration, and in part 3B, which says, new commercial billboards are erected after March 31st of 2015 are prohibited, except for these multi-business pylon signs. And then if you keep going to section, or part 18 of that, the next change, that adds in all the language for the multi-business pylon signs. Talks about clustering 2 or more in an area, it gives height restrictions.
Can you put that on an overhead so we can keep up with you, John, please?
Yes, sir.
There we go.
So here is part 18 of that, that adds in the language for limited commercial, downtown commercial, and commercial light industrial. It wouldn't be for waterfront commercial areas. It goes through the standards of how many architectural standards, how it all works, what the signs, we don't regulate what the signs themselves say. We just regulate the size and the locations. Permissible height is 30 feet. And it's a monument that's going in. They're going to meet all the restrictions that they have, the 10-foot, the setbacks from the road right away and beyond the property and everything. Does anybody have any questions about that piece?
P and Z committee went through this and approved
They already went
this.
through that and they approved all of these changes.
So they. See, we have 3 members of the committee here, so.
Are these going to be two-faced? One each way?
They can be one on either side, yes.
700 square feet.
Does the 700 square feet cover all the faces or just one-sided?
That's per side. So if you're going, it's going to be 700 square feet on one side, 30 feet tall, and they could have their sign on the other side in 700.
Well, what's the maximum size of our, was or is, I'm not sure, of what our signage
In that
was?
same area, right now,
Yeah.
any one business that is along there could have a sign 128 square feet,
128 square feet.
yes, per sign.
4 by 8, 32. That's 4 by 8 sheets of plywood, right?
Correct.
See where you're going.
So I just have a question on the same thing on the 700. So if the top of the sign's at 30 feet off the ground, then there's a clear zone that's 10 feet underneath it.
Yes,
So the height of the sign itself is 20 feet.
correct.
And so to get 700, it'd be 35 feet long, which would be 3/4 of this room. I mean, it seems odd to me. It seems big. If each of these panels is 4 feet, count 9 of them.
I could put a 10-foot high fence across my property and call it a sign. How do we get around that one?
Well, each of these signs, it says, you know, if you're talking about who could put signs up, is that the question you had, Mr. Mayor? What was the question?
This section right here with the
Yeah,
700 square.
if 700 square feet's not the right size, then what size would you prefer? I mean, that was a number that came from the planning commission, so.
Don't know. I don't know. I have no idea.
I haven't studied it, but
It just seems big, you know,
Yeah.
when you
Seems-
think about it, you know, nothing
That
will
was a
grow
number that
behind
came-
it, it's
Brad,
so
if I
big.
remember right, when we put this together, that was a Baxter number, correct? If I remember right?
Probably,
This came from the city of Baxter.
but of course, they have bigger, the first one that's there, the Home Depot sign was the first one, and that's a pretty, but just to give you a visual.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's a big development. But I think that was the first one in the city of Baxter, is my memory. But that's, the Home Depot is the main sign, but underneath, there's a couple of other smaller signs underneath it. But there's nothing magical for this community for 700. It's whatever, obviously, one goal is to get it big enough so we can have because this is in exchange, as you can read above. If a business wants to have one of these, they can't have their own pylon on the site, too. So they're kind of giving up the rights to their own sign in exchange for kind of a group signage, and they can sell those rights to the other units, or however they're gonna do it as part of their development, that's up to them.
Well, if we have a, let's just make it easy, a 10 business development, and they want signage on the road, and 2 of them, or 10, 8 of them opt out, they want their own signs, what do we get?
Each one of those signs would then be 128 square feet if they were to opt for their own sign.
But they would only be able to allowed to do that if they have frontage on the road.
Correct.
Well, they could still do it, it's just people wouldn't want, if you're the one we're looking at, the Whitefish Business Park, is the one that brought this to a head, the one south of the storage. If you're 3 lots in, off of County 3, you can put a 128-foot square sign there, but no one's gonna see it.
It's on your property, though, it
Gotta
can't be
be
on.
on your
Right.
premise.
Because it's a billboard if you stick it on somebody else's lot out on the highway. And so that's not allowed currently. And we want to be able to promote, my logic would be, I mean, that's up to the council here, but, you know, instead of having businesses strung for 8 miles long, you know, most cities say, hey, we want to encourage a little bit more width of development, you know, so you're not driving through town for ever and ever and ever. And so to do that, we got to have a way to get them to have signage on the highway, because that's where everyone sees the signage. So I think it's a great idea. How big a sign, that could be an issue. Right, obviously with this development, that there's 7 businesses, they each would have 100 feet. And until you see it, it might shock you how big that is. And obviously if you make it too small, don't think of this one development, we're thinking citywide here, but this is the one, you know, that comes to mind now. They're not all gonna have enough room to actually have proper signage, you know, and people see it while you're driving by. But where that balance is, there's not a right answer to that. But the goal is to let people that are not on the road still build commercial property in Cross Lake and do so because they think they can have good signage still on the highway, and people will come and turn and go into their business.
Just even 30 feet high for a sign is an awful long ways up.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see those, the wind will blow and it'll be down and
Is it
it'll
limited,
cost a lot of money.
is it limited to the number of businesses, or can 3 businesses put up 700 square feet each direction?
700 square feet would be the limit, regardless of the number of businesses. So it could be changed to say, per business can have a certain square footage per, you know, per business with a cap, with a limit, maybe, of how much you want to see that cap limit.
So in other words, out in front of Pine Peaks, there's, what do we got there? 1, 2, 3, 4 businesses. We could have 700 square feet of signage facing each way.
A 2-sided sign, yeah.
I don't think that's reasonable. I'm sorry. But that's-
Well, it is also a conditional use permit, so anytime that anyone is gonna apply for this, they're gonna come in through the planning commission to get a conditional use, which could, they gotta have a plan, this is what we're gonna put up, this is what size we're proposing these signs to be, and as a condition on that conditional use, they could always say that, we think that's too big for that area, reduce your size down.
Yeah, but I don't want to, once we pass it, I don't want to leave it to that.
Yep.
If you're getting squeamish about 700 feet or 30 feet high, or, I'd recommend, I don't know the timing, but we should come back and get a couple examples in Brainerd or Baxter or Pequot or wherever you want us to look of some actual signs that you can go drive by and get a visual and feel, instead of trying to,
We have no
Imagine it.
application right now before us.
Yeah.
There's nothing pushing to have this, so this could definitely be something you could push back to this part of the ordinance revision could be pushed back to the planning commission for review and come back with a different recommendation with some examples of, you know, like Brad said, signs that you could go look at yourself to get an idea of what it would look like and that sort of thing.
well, there could be some in this community that it's just for one business, but you would say, hey, that's the biggest we want to see for a sign in Cross Lake. But we would need that guidance to know how to redraft it. I think that the concept is a great idea. It definitely helps encourage off-highway development.
Sure.
But we don't want to pass an ordinance and then see that first sign come up and
Go,
shock
holy
everybody.
crap, what do we
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. So I'd rather have you think about size now.
This is, of all the things tonight, this is probably the least pressing. This is
Probably the what?
the least pressing. I mean, this is not a real hot button issue that needs to be fixed tonight. It could be definitely tabled, this part of the ordinance could be tabled and sent back to the planning commission for further review.
Well, at one point, what was our maximum sign size on-site in front of a business?
It would be in a
It used to be.
area that is above 45 miles per hour, it would be 128 square feet on either side of that sign.
I thought at one point we had, there were about 32 square feet, 4 by 8. Am I wrong with that? Probably.
That didn't change from when that part of the ordinance, when the revision was through, we never changed those numbers, so.
Well, 700 feet is a change. I know that
It is,
because I
yes.
saw
Well, we're
it.
not saying, we're not disagreeing that 700 square feet, we're saying the 128 is not.
Okay,
Remember that, the 120 was a carryover from the previous ordinance, so.
all right.
We can definitely push that one back and have the planning commission relook at that and come forward with some different numbers for you at an upcoming meeting if you prefer.
What do you, members,
I
Think
tend to
at
agree
this
that's pretty big. I'd like to look at some examples as well as what that might look like, because I would tend to agree with you that 700 square feet, that's a billboard. 20 by 35, that's a big sign.
Why don't I can easily get you a list of 4 or 5 signs that everyone would know where they're at. You can, you drive by them, and we'll get you the dimensions so you can put a number to, an example in your mind,
Okay.
and bring it back.
And then I agree with Dave too, that 30 feet high is pretty high. I'd rather have less below the sign, maybe 5 feet or 7 feet instead of going up that
Well, we want to
high.
have a decent below so we can, we don't want to screw up sight lines is the main reason we want we don't want to get up in the air, so you're not blocking field of vision for traffic safety.
Can I-
But I'll
can I
give
just-
you an examples of all that. I mean, we can get examples of how high some of these are and how big they are, and then that'll tell you if
Without
that's.
seeing it, yeah.
Right, well, I'll say like,
Yeah.
I'll get some numbers for you for the couple that I know of. I'll find them.
Well, these,
Just a
These-
thought on,
these can't be installed in the right-of-way. Is that correct?
Correct, they need to be
Okay.
set back.
So site
Look at-
distance underneath isn't,
if you look at item 13, it says that only one sign per business is allowed 32 square feet. I'm just thinking if you said 7 businesses, the idea of putting them all in one spot off premise is great. That would, you're talking 220 square feet there. 4 by 8 sheet of something, lined up however you can.
I know that MinDOT's got some numbers too as to what side of signage they allow on, depending on the speed of the road too, as to, how side, side of signs too, so we can get some of those numbers.
I think that's an awful big sign for Cross Lake. That's just where I'm flying at that.
Yep, we hear it, I think we hear it, and so you guys need to just make.
This is construction though.
Okay,
I mean, that's,
Do you want a motion to table?
Well, I think it'd be
The-
great if we could finish up with what we're doing, and then you could.
I mean, just to table the sign portion of the
Yes,
ordinance.
and then John will just finish up with the last couple.
okay.
Also
here,
move
and then we'll do
to
the-
You're gonna
table
move
the
to
sign
this
portion.
Article 33 sign portion of this change?
Article 33, yep.
A second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Wessels, second by Hecox to table
Mr. Mayor,
Article
I just-
33 signs.
I think you should throw probably 43 in there too, the definition. So we probably don't want to define something that's not actually in the ordinance, so let's also include 43 in that.
Is it 40? Well, let's see here.
That's the definition of a.
Oh, yeah, I see that. Want to amend your motion, Mr. Wessels?
Certainly. To include,
Hecox will second that? We
Yes.
now have a motion that includes Article 33 and Article 43. Is that correct, Chris?
It is.
Okay. All in favor?
aye.
There we go. Okay. Thank you.
Now we're back to the rest of the sign stuff.
All right, then the last section that that they brought forward from the planning commission and proposed is the Article 36. If you remember from Article 11, we took out the language on residential accessory structures, and this is where it gets put back in. And it's a whole new section. So what we're saying here is on lots that are 2 acres in size or less in the residential areas, residential accessory structures must meet the following requirements. And what the planning commission has come up with is that you would be allowed to build up to 1,200 square feet in size and meet all the current setbacks that are there. And then having permits, and that's all the language that was pulled out from before. Basically, you gotta get a permit, can't be used for human habitation unless that you get that it is permitted for auxiliary quarters per the ordinance. That all the height and setback and height restrictions be met, and construction complies with the rest of the chapter that we talk about. And then this language has not changed, it's just added in at this part where semi-trailers, cargo containers, railed cars, manufactured houses, or similar structures shall not be used for storage on your properties. Any questions?
Just
Yes.
one, John. And the height, building height, 25 feet?
Yes.
And then back on the other one, we talk about shoreland districts on 26-310, they talk about 35 feet. That used to be mid-peak?
It still
So
is.
it's
Still is.
somewhere in here it says mid-peak is,
Building definition.
okay, all right.
Building height definition does
Yep.
say mid-peak.
Yep.
So if it's a dwelling, if it's a house that's going in or a cabin, then it is a 35-foot high restriction in height.
Accessory structure.
Accessory structures themselves are 25 feet out.
Okay. Next.
That would be it. You took chapter 43 changes out, so.
So what you have before you then will be changes to Article 11, 12, and
36.
11, where did 11 go?
I think it's important too to point out that this process has been, something that's been discussed since May of this year with the Planning Commission, and staff began work on that in June, and then we came back to the county, or to the city council in July, and comment period started July 24th. Never did receive any public comments during that time, and now we had the public hearing on the 25th of September, and then back to you today. So this is not something that's taken just a couple months. It's been through quite a bit of public review have been available, public hearings have been available, and then we're here tonight for your decision as to how you'd like to proceed.
I would make a motion to approve the changes to Article 11, Article 12, and Article 36.
I'll second that.
Does 43 need to be,
We tabled that.
That's the sign
oh,
part.
that was
43
33
is.
and 43, I'm sorry.
Yep. So 11, 12, and 36.
We have a motion by Wessels, second by Hecox, is that right?
Yes.
That we approve these changes as recommended by the commission and planning and zoning staff, with the exceptions of Article 33 and 43. Is that correct?
Yeah, we already tabled those, yeah. So just it's
That's right, we did
the
approve
approval of
those.
11, 12, and
Yep.
36.
Just want to make sure.
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Last thing that we need is just a motion to publish this. So it's published in the newspaper, part was that date again? The publish date for this? Next week. So we publish in effective October 20th. That'll be the effective date for this part of the ordinance. So we just need a motion to approve publishing this.
I'll
Need a
make that motion.
Motion Hecox,
I'll second.
second Wessels, to publish the approved changes. Is that correct?
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The last thing that I have from planning and zoning is, back in July, you asked that the planning commission take a look at changes that might come about for the nuisance ordinance. So we went through the process with them, gave them the examples that were given to us, kind of worked through it. I went through and looked at what the current wording is on there, and this is on your screen. It talks about abandoned vehicles in section 104 of chapter 30, and then junk in section 105. And they really don't cover some of the issues that we've had over the summer with people that have stuff in their yards that needs to be cleaned up. So going through the examples that we had, and you'll see in memo that I put together, we, as staff suggested that we make these changes, and the planning commission voted to recommend that you consider these changes for chapter 30 of the city code to enhance those definitions a little bit. I don't believe we're looking for any action right now. We're just looking for you to take these recommendations and incorporate it into what the city attorney has been working on for new language in the nuisance, in addition to, I got my second page talking about enforcement. So we have a way to enforce what the ordinance says.
John, I would, based on some of my experience here this past year, you might add something called demolition debris.
That is, if you read in the second page there, under, change that I suggested
read
for
too
section
fast?
105,
It's there.
we did add demolition
is it?
debris.
Construction debris.
That's construction. I said demolition.
Isn't it the same?
No, construction debris is when you build something.
Oh, and that's fine, we can add that in, that's,
It can be added for
I
sure.
mean, you can
Easily.
argue that. That's
yes.
Absolutely.
petty.
Yeah, it can be added for sure.
Okay,
This
just,
is just, this, no action needed tonight, this was just simply the
Yep.
report back to the council based on what the planning commission was
Appreciate
asking
that.
them to do, so.
So I guess if you do have any questions on what is in here.
are you asking at this point that the council request a method of enforcement that we can use?
Yes, I am, because right now, if somebody is in violation of one of these ordinances, and I walk out and say, you need to clean up your mess, and they tell me to please leave my property, my only recourse is to give it to the city attorney and for the city to sue.
We're gonna talk about enforcement later on tonight.
What?
We're gonna talk about enforcement a little later
Oh,
on my report,
Okay,
yeah.
very good. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you, John. Thank you,
All right,
Chris.
thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Mr. Larson, Cross Lake Communications.
Good evening, Mayor Rowe and councilmen. Before you, in your packets, you have highlights for Cross Lake Communications for the month of September. And items 1 through 4, you've already approved in your consent calendar. I'll move right on to number 5. And the statement says we have completed 45 installations. I'd like to update you as of 4 o'clock today. We now have completed 80 installations at customer homes on Phase 1 of the conversions for the new electronics in our fiber area, which is end of life and needs to be replaced by 2017. I've reported to you earlier, a couple of months ago, that our goal is to do 300 of these, and we're well on our way, and we're working diligently to continue to complete those installations to that new equipment. As it will take another year after this, almost 2 more years. Well, we hope not to take 2 years, but we'll be done by 2017. Number 6, during our annual inspection of our generator, we discovered we had a water leak, and that since has been repaired and fixed. However, we're trying to figure out just how old that standby generator is, and I believe that it was put in the late 70s, and so we will be putting in our budget for 2016 a new generator. We cannot go without a very dependable generator. Number 7, we'd like to begin offering a new service to business and residential customers. It's called VFax. The service allows customers to send and receive faxes via their PC, laptop, smartphone, etc. And the advisory board recommends to the city council that we offer the VFax for a flat rate of $9.99 per month. And I'd just like to add that Debbie Florshinger brought this up at a chamber meeting last week, and there was considerable interest of her just announcing that we're looking at this. So this evening, we recommend that you approve that for us to move forward.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion Nelson, second Schrupp, that we offer to our community the VFax, which allows faxing to your PC or laptop. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to number 8, the Communications Vision Subcommittee met again and reviewed the pros and cons on various options and staff is still, continues to work on a 5-year profit and loss projections. And we don't have our next meeting scheduled as of yet, but I want to thank the council this evening. At a prior meeting, you appointed another citizen to that subcommittee, which I think will be very beneficial. This individual, John Finke, has tremendous experience, and he's a citizen of Cross Lake, and he showed some interest that he'd like to offer his services. So we certainly appreciate the city council for appointing him to that working committee. Number 9, Internet Help Desk opening. We continue to advertise an interview for this position. In the interim, we continue to use a CTC staff member, filling that out and until we hire a replacement. I'll give you an update. We've interviewed 9 people, invited 4 back for a second interview. 2 withdrew before the second interview. The other 2 did not meet our standards or our criteria. We've continued to advertise another 2 weeks, and so far we haven't any new applications, and we continue to use the CTC staff to fill this position. So we're going to be having a joint staff meeting between CTC management and Cindy and Debbie, and we're going to have to take another look and see what we're going to do about this situation, because it just isn't working to fill it. And finally, it's not on your highlights, but I want to add, we are also planning another holiday open house on December 9th from 1 to 4. We did this last year. We will also be accepting donations for the food shelf, and looking forward to, if the cookies and the coffee are good, maybe you'll bring a can of beans to give to the food shelf. So, and that concludes my report this evening, if there's no other questions.
Thank you, Kevin. Park and Rec, Library, all those good things. John Henke.
Good evening.
Good evening, John.
Just a quick update on a few things here. We continue to offer yoga at 10 o'clock on Tuesday mornings. We have a refresher class for AAA senior driving on November 4th. That's from 9 in the morning till 1. And PAL update, our last trail ride program for the year is coming up this Wednesday at 10, 11, and 12. So you can call the community center to register for that. And thank the volunteers that made that possible this year. Also, want to point out and give thanks to the PAL Foundation for their donation of $174.75 for the summer reading program, and also a $132 donation to help support Friday Bridge. Volleyball, our session started September 9th, and play is on Wednesdays from 6:15 to 8:45. Session is 10 weeks long, so you can come and play some volleyball on Wednesday nights if you're interested in that. And our Cross Lake Monster Dash and Halloween party is coming up in a couple weeks, October 24th. Monster Dash starts at 10:15. After that, we'll have the kids' Halloween party from noon to 2. And want to thank the Cross Lake Ideal Lions Club for supplying the donation to make the Halloween party possible this year. And also extend a thank you to Reed's Market and Dr. Linda Lewis and all the volunteers that make that program possible. So we're looking forward to another successful event this year. On the Monster Dash side of things, our premier sponsors, Moonlight Bay Restaurant, Cross Lake Drug, Cross Lake Ace Hardware, and Karma Race Management. So thank those folks. Are the same 4 sponsors we had for the last year, and looking forward to a good event. And that's my report for tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if John could give an update on the roof.
The roof, they're roofing. They're up there.
That's
Today
good.
wasn't a good day to be up there, but they're working. That's a big surface up there. You guys have been working hard. They got the back side pretty much done. They're going to be starting to work on the front side here soon, and doing a great job. So it'll look nice.
Great, thanks.
We'll have shingles in all the areas we're supposed to have shingles when it's all done. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Public Works, Ted Strand. Good evening, Ted.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. there's 3 items, or 2 items on there. First one is just for your information. At its October 5th meeting, we had a preliminary design for reinforcing the bridge embankments at the Melinda Shores Bridge. Basically, what they're talking about doing is a wire gabion basket, filling it with rock and using that to support, and there'd be multiple tiered, these baskets to support the embankments and protect them. The channel that's there is the old pilings up the old bridge. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but there isn't much left. It's all falling in. The sand is actually washing in as boats go back and forth. It has fallen about 2.5 feet on both sides of, up against the existing embankments. So we gotta do something, and we need to do it soon. So we asked WSN, and you guys authorized last time for them to do the preliminary. At this time, we're asking for the council's permission to move forward with design, bidding, and construction observation. Mark, you got any comments to this you want to make, or?
No, if they have questions, then I'll assist with any questions, guys.
The estimate to do this, between the design and everything, and the actual construction is about $60,000 to do this project.
Got that in your budget?
I don't know where it's gonna come from.
Mike?
Ted,
Mike?
Ted, you want to put these up so they can see? You know, you can show them what the new one.
So you're really scheduling Melinda Shores for next spring construction, correct?
Yet this fall, if we could.
Oh, you can, is that right?
Yeah, if we could do it.
Are you gonna lengthen the bridge then?
Nope, the bridge doesn't change. All this is the gabions. See
Yep.
where they stair stepped?
Yep.
And that's to protect these bridge footings, to keep the sand from washing out.
And there's still 12 feet left after you do that, huh?
Yes, it'd be the
Good.
same width channel as there is today. This is what a gabion basket looks like.
Yeah.
It's just a basic big wire basket. And here's some of them that are actually installed. We have them, we've used them in the community before, just right by the community center and the walking trail, across from where Miller comes in. Right there, and there's a bunch of them holding back the bank there.
What, do you tie them together?
Yes, they're the hog ring together. There's actually silk fabric that goes behind them.
Mhm.
So it's a big one, long, one unit when it's all done.
I suspect you're looking for a motion.
I'd like a motion to move forward with the design and bidding, and then we can come back to you if the bids come out too high or we can't afford it. At least we know where we're gonna be.
How much are you asking for?
Well, it could be as much as 60,000, but to do
No,
the
for the-
design and the
For the design?
design, the build design is 9,000, the construction observation is another 8,500.
So we're really, at this point, looking for 9 grand, because the construction observation would go along with the bid.
If that moves forward.
Can we do it that way? Then maybe Mike can come up with the money.
I'm looking to the city administrator for his,
Yeah, I mean, you can split it up if you'd like. I mean, if it's fine with WSN to do it that way, certainly can split it up.
Well, do you want to approve both amounts or just the one?
Well, I don't mind splitting it up, to be honest with you. If you don't do the construction, then, I mean.
Right, until we
we'll come
get
back
there.
ahead
at
with
that
it, so.
time.
Right.
I'll make a
That's fine.
motion that we approve $9,000 for the design for the repair of the,
Design and bidding.
Or Melinda Shores Drive Bridge. Need a second.
I'll second that.
Second, Schrupp, motion roll. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Uh-oh. City attorney.
Well, as promised, the first thing is, we've talked about this, but it's been a while. But Mr. Vogt has given us an example of an ordinance for administrative fines that comes from Little Falls. I've have several cities I work with that have these already, but it's kind of back to what Mr. Colstead was talking about when it comes to nuisance or Another one he asked me about tonight, you pass all these variances, and they, one of the conditions might be a no-mow zone, and of course, the people ignore that. And sometimes the violation's minor enough where it makes no sense to hire me to go to court and spend thousands of dollars for a mowing violation. That just is, it's too much resources allotted to one little issue. So that's what this is about. It's a way to, instead of just sending nasty letters from staff, which doesn't always work,
Right.
this actually adopts a fee schedule, and we can have fines, and if they don't pay, we can assess the fines against the property. And it all can be done without incurring the large expense of litigation. So, we had the actual ordinance, but in my mind, it's probably premature to adopt, because once we have we could adopt it and then worry about and just not make it effective yet, but a couple of assuming that's the first thing we want, is kind of get a feel from you guys that, yes, let's move forward. Number two, is there any sorts of violations that you think are inappropriate for this kind of framework? For example, right now, just because of some legal issues, we're suggesting that traffic violations, stay out of this,
Good.
situation. You start arguing with who gets the money when it comes to county, city, and a lot of cities have tried that, and it's a pain in the butt. So we're suggesting just get rid of that idea, and we're mainly thinking of, at least I'm mainly thinking of, nuisance land use kind of issues. But if there's anything else that you believe is inappropriate for this kind of system, tell us. And also that you want us to go ahead and get going on this. And then we need to have quite a bit of staff time to adopt a fee schedule and come up with a kind of a structure for each violation shouldn't be the same fine. And for certain things, do they get fined every day, or if they don't respond in 30 days, do they get fined again, to kind of keep on them? Because the goal is not to collect money, it's to get them to fix the problem. But that takes a fair amount of work. We can give staff examples from other cities. And then we also kind of need to get in place, there should be the right from a due process standpoint, because this is a legal fine. There should be a way to have a administrative hearing process, so that if people think that they're being wrongly accused of something, they have a right to complain and argue before they just get zinged with a fine. And so to do that, we would need to kind of get some people lined up, typically they're other lawyers, but somebody needs to we have to have a list of people that would serve as hearing officers if somebody wants to actually hold a hearing. Because we want to have this all lined up, so when you pass the ordinance, we can actually use it, and it's ready to go. I said that all pretty quickly, but again, the first topic, I think the biggest topic is, does this idea make sense to you guys? Again, we're not trying to create new violations in the city. This is only taking existing violations and having different ways to enforce compliance, is all this is about. But I could explain it in more detail, or try to answer more questions, or Dan could too, probably, because he's worked with it as well.
Mr. Person, we worked on one of these, I suppose, it's got to be 7 years ago or so.
Okay.
It took a lot of heat for it, because we didn't think Cross Lake was big enough to start levying fines for what people then thought were kind of not so important violations. I would certainly entertain some discussion here about, has the time finally arrived?
Well, that's the I think, a couple of comments to that. I have heard a little bit of that. I don't know the whole history and how it worked, but a lot of our ordinances have changed greatly since then. So, not in every area, but land use it sure has, for example. And we're working on changing nuisance and kind of cleaning that up, but the goal, I hope, of all that is it's a bit more streamlined and obvious and a little more user-friendly in terms of what is a violation. I guess that was probably our biggest problem before. It was very voluminous to try to figure out what the rules were. But again, this is not at all imposing one new rule for the city. It's simply to have a different way to enforce them. But yeah, it does mean, I don't know if that's good or bad to you guys, that's what we're looking for. It does mean that if someone is not following the rules, again, I'll use the example of, 6 years ago, they got a variance, and one of the conditions was gutters on the building, or a no-mow zone, or the things you always see in variance applications, okay? If staff does a inspection of the neighboring property or whatever and notices they're mowing in the area that's supposed to be no-mow zone, I'm hearing from staff right now, they're sending letters and certain people are ignoring it.
Yep,
And right now, their only recourse is spend a few grand through the court system for something as silly as a mowing violation,
Sure.
which, as a result, it kind of just sits there and nothing happens, because we don't want to spend that kind of money on something that small. So that's the current plight we have. Now, maybe that's okay. Maybe we don't want to go there, and it's going to make, it would be more staff time to enforce it, but we'd also get more compliance. So I'm not, that's a policy decision of, if you don't think it's broken right now, we don't need to go here.
Well, I'm just asking the question because I've been through the mill on the P and Z issues, and, the question was, you got items, so paragraph C. One of the things they were concerned about at the time is allowing that much power in the hands of a city employee without necessarily the advice or approval of the council. Just a question. We really got kicked around with this, and we just gave up. We didn't haul it off.
No, that's probably beyond what violations we want to regulate by this new ordinance if we pass it. We clearly do want to talk about the process of who can issue these.
Yeah.
Again, no matter who does it, in my mind, to make it legal, we need to have a way for the aggrieved, to the person that's getting the fine, to have a chance to appeal and go in front of this hearing board, So if some staff person did wrongly issue a fine, they have a chance to complain.
Yep.
But that's still, try to think through if, especially if you've got some past experience, if you think that's going to cause more problems than it's going to help by, having more people out there trying to enforce our rules, I guess that might be I don't know. That's what we're looking for right now is
Well, I'll tell you,
feedback.
I share the frustration. I understand that part of it. Is there we got any other input to this? I think it's probably long overdue, but,
The trouble with any kind of ordinance like this, you need to really ponder for a while, okay, what can of worms are we opening up with this? Unintended consequences always show up, and this one is ripe for all sorts of unintended consequences. I agree that we need something like this for things like a no-mow zone. I mean, to make them, you agreed not to mow that, and here you are mowing it. So we did our part to give you the variance, you're not doing your part. How do we enforce that and get them to comply? But it's really difficult. I know one of the problems I had before, and I talked with Mr. Pence and John Colston a little while ago, is that at some point, this body has to be able to step in. We don't want to get involved with finding somebody who's mowing something have them take that away from us, that's fine. But at some point, if we get enough complaints from enough people that we don't like the hearing officer, and then I appealed it to the hearing officer that guy appointed, I'm going to get the same answer, okay? Because it's just going to his friend. And so there has to be a way of checks and balances on this that we can, if it gets abused. Today, everything might be fine. I'm talking about 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, different council, different city administrator, different city attorney, might it get abused? We have to have a way that the council can correct that. And that's a concern that I have, is that I think for the most part, it would be handled fairly and equitably today, but it might not be the case 5 or 10 years from now. We might have different people here that just as soon find everybody they can find,
You're saying the same thing I did, just.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, we've had this in my previous employer, long-term employer, for many years. And we were issuing hundreds of administrative citations, and I know of 0 appeals, not one. I talked to Scott Sadusky, who had done a bunch of our housing inspections and inspections in general. And in fact, we had they had an intern, I think, a year ago, an intern that was issuing just a ton of these. And we did not have any appeals. So I think, I certainly understand Mark's concerns. You can repeal this thing. I would suggest you put it into place, see how it works. I mean, if it just turns out that this thing is a mess, repeal it, get rid of it. And just let your residents know they're going to get dragged into the district court system because they didn't mow their lawn. That's what this is trying to take care of, that they got a bunch of junk laying in their yard that the neighbor's just been complaining about for years, and we can't get a court date. This should take care of it. People in general, I mean, if they get this, they get the fine, they get the citation, and you have inspectors that say, look, if you have your lawn more than a couple days, we'll forget about this fine. It just gives people incentive to get it done, and it worked very well. We just put it in place not that long ago in Little Falls. I have received no concerns at all from any residents. I have heard nothing. And we've been issuing a lot of them. An old town like that. So I would suggest you try to determine which, ordinances that you want, codes you want enforced. I think your inspectors will do it. I think they'll do a great job. If it runs into a problem, I'd, get rid of it. But I'd be shocked if it runs into a problem. I just really would.
So are you suggesting that we identify the areas that we would call for enforcement on?
Well, yeah, you need to.
I mean, it's just not a wide open thing.
No.
We detail it out and then go forward
We
from there.
could stick with just land use and nuisance, and if we did do that, it'd be much more obvious who would be the ones enforcing it. It'd be John, mainly, if we limit it to that area of our code. And if it works well, you could expand it to other areas if you'd like. In other cities like Brainerd, they have, the rental code is by far and away the hugest part of their violations, but we don't have rental code in Cross Lake. Right. So there's whole portions of admin penalties in other bigger cities that won't apply here. In my mind, I'm mainly thinking land use nuisance. And that wouldn't be necessarily I think P&Z would be, our staff would be the ones that would enforce that. And we could stick to just that, if you want to keep it simple for starters. But someday, maybe we have other ordinances that we first have to adopt. And if we adopt them, we might choose to do administrative fines with them. But we don't really have that many ordinances right now in the city of Cross Lake that would fit this structure.
Well, if we decide to pursue this, what would be the next step, Brad?
If you think it makes sense for, maybe start with those, for example, I'd want P&Z and the commission to come back, look at their ordinance and try to come up with a fee schedule, because that needs to be adopted by council and seen before we go forward. And that'll help frame this up a bit better to see kind of what numbers are we talking for violations. And not just the amount, but it's the repeated violation or the people that, some people, I think, especially in this community, might be willing to just pay the fine and not fix the problem. So we have to have a way to
Get them both.
think of that and see,
All
how,
right.
But
what do you-
we wanted just, before we spent that time and effort, we wanted the council to kind of give us the nod that, yeah, that's worth the time. It probably is something we'll do if it comes back in a way that looks, feasible. So we're not looking for adoption tonight because we're not ready. We don't have,
No, I understand.
You know.
It's not, it's a framework.
yeah.
We have,
Interesting.
just a little more, as far as the hearing officers go, what I had done in two of the towns I've worked is just send letters to each one of the law firms in the whole community and see if they wish to be a hearing officer. That's one of the lawyers, local lawyers. Did that in Brainerd, done that in Little Falls, and see who's interested. And then you have a list, and you just go down the list and, pick one. For each person, there's usually, is there a strike-off in this? One side or the other can say, I don't.
We need to have a
want
list
this
of a
person."
few.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
And I have had a few appeals, by the way. And I envision here we'll get some appeals.
You know, we may,
so-
you've had some in Brainerd?
In Baxter, yeah.
Oh, in Baxter,
And I
okay.
definitely anticipate some here.
Yep.
So
Okay.
we want to have that
Oh, yeah.
all lined up before we
So,
go forward.
yeah, so we would have that in place, your local law firms, and, you know, maybe if you want to stretch it out to, you know, the surrounding area or Brainerd or whatever, you could do that too. So, you know, we could handle that and get that back to you, get the fee schedule back to you. And then there's a blank here, it talks about Cross Lake City Code sections. I would hope the planning commission or staff would give us some help with what sections we're talking about here.
What is the council's wish?
I'd like to look at this for a little longer,
Well, I
and
think
compare it
that's
to what we
definitely in order. Yeah.
discussed a few years ago.
Yep.
And I've had a conversation with John and Chris about it. I haven't had a conversation with Brad, but just how do we prevent certain things from happening, yet at the same time give them the power to correct problems that we have? In my mind, the two things that I note are dogs that bark whenever the owner goes to the bar.
Do we need a motion or is
Okay, and,
consensus good enough
And the other one is just junk issues, garbage
doing
issues.
this?
Well, I think you should direct it back to the planning commission and staff to
Yeah,
fill
I'd
in
like
the
to see a
blanks here.
consensus if it's, because it's not, it's a fair amount of work to come up with a fee schedule and figure out what we want to apply it to and come back for final review. So
I'll
I
make
would
a
like to
motion.
make sure most
made
of
that
you
motion?
think that's a good idea.
You made that motion?
I'm working on it.
Oh,
I'll make the motion that we direct staff, the planning and zoning, commission, city attorney, Dan Vogt, our city administrator, to pursue this and identify the items that we want to enforce and propose some fines that we might want to use.
I'll
I was
second
just
it.
going to add, if you wouldn't mind, we get back maybe at the December meeting. Give us a couple more months.
Whenever
to
you're ready.
work
I
this
don't
out.
know if there's
I
a
know
rush, but
You know, I'm sensitive to the fact that Mark would like to think about this a little further. We've got, planning
Oh, yeah.
commission's got
Well,
some work to do. We've got work to do, so come back in a couple months.
absolutely, we need to think about it
Can I ask
some
a
more.
question to Brad's comment about
Should be a
maybe two
separate-
categories,
Has there been a second?
land
Yeah.
use and nuisance? Is that kind of, is this what you're looking at, a recommendation that maybe it'll come back and it's just those two areas?
I think,
Nuisance is a big,
Well,
one size fits all.
if there's a bit of caution among council, I would recommend starting small,
yes.
and we can always expand it. Once we have the structure in place, it's very simple to add. We could ask department heads about other sections of our code, and maybe there's some other part of the city that we could regulate well with this after you like how it's going with land use.
You all right with that, Dave?
Well, I've talked to John about land use stuff, and he does have some issues where he doesn't know what to do.
That's all right, I can
He's
bring them forward
Run
through
against
this.
a wall, and he has no,
Yep.
he can talk till he's blue in the face, but nothing he says gets the
Been going
job
on
done.
for 10 years, I understand.
I think there's some ways to work through this. My conversation I had with John and Chris earlier, there's some ways to get this done. I just
Yes.
want to kind of look it over a little bit, take it slow, start small.
My motion is not a commitment to use, but to commission to see what, or an intent to see what it looks like as we start to put it forward, give us some meat to think about. That's all I'm asking. Fair enough?
And you
I
have a
second
second?
Did second.
Gary, second.
Motion by Roel Heacock seconds it. We're going, I guess we've already made it. You made the motion. Any more discussion?
December meeting then?
Bring it forward in the September meeting, yes.
December.
December.
What did I say? Fumble mouth?
September,
December
11
meeting.
months from now,
Council
There you
meeting.
go.
2 months.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I see the next thing on your agenda is a closed session. Can we conclude the business of the council to let these people go and then
Sure.
step to that? and
Yep,
come
it's
back?
the same item as last month, it's the same reason to go into close. So we can finish your open forum, or whatever else you'd like, and then at the end,
Everybody's leaving.
Hey,
Is there any other old business?
I Well, I think it's old business or new business. I discussed it once before. I got another call from a neighbor over on Robert Street where that access is, that it's a sand access to Cross Lake. The ice fishermen use it to get out there all winter long. And it's been just fine for years and years and years. He recently put up some no parking signs because in the last 2 years, actually this last year, used to be just the dock guys used it for launching their boats to go out there. And then they'd leave their stuff there. And then in the wintertime, it got used by ice fishermen. It's designed for the Platte of McLean. Remember, original park dedication fees were regarding that sort of thing. Well, at the Park and Rec, we discussed it there also. And I said, keep in mind, this guy's got his heart in the right place. What's gone on is since we started inspecting boats at the public ramps, those guys who know they're not going to be able to pass the inspection are coming there. And that guy said, I had no zebra mussels 2 years ago. My dock is just covered in them, big globs. And so he has his heart in the right place. We need to figure out what to do with these. I have another neighbor down in South Bay. It's a 20-foot grass strip right away that goes to the lake. And he's been mowing it for all these years. It's now so rutted up from the big 4x4s pulling the 22-foot bass boats out down there. They drop them in and then come out and they just dig with their big four-wheel drives and make a huge mess. And again, they're avoiding the inspections at the public ramps. That's the only reason they're coming there now. Why would you put your bass boat in on a dirt ramp that's shallow out for 80 feet, unless you know darn well your boat's contaminated?
You can guess at that.
Yeah, anybody could figure that one out. So we need to figure out as a council, what do we want to do with these right-of-ways? Should we just say no more boat launching at these right-of-ways?
That's an interesting point. Do you want to put it in your list of issues? Might propose it there. Ted?
It's public property. We
Yes,
haven't
it
limited
is.
the use of public property before. A lot of the people that are using these, it's faster. The accesses do have a lot of, really, we got 3 main public accesses, other than these few grass strips in there, and your commercial one. We haven't got a lot of accesses to the lake. I think if we created another access, it might answer some of these problems. Maybe that access is something for future we could do. A better boat access for the public.
You know,
I'm just throwing these out.
Yep.
That's just my opinion. I just wanted to throw it out.
Well, it's interesting because stick around, Ted, the DNR and a few others would just soon limit the number of accesses we got so they can provide boat inspection and monitoring for invasive species. So, two things. And I guess, as I heard the complaint, this one has to do with invasive species.
Well, the issue here is he never had any traffic down there. It was the dock guys that used it. Occasionally, one of his neighbors would launch a fishing boat or a jet ski there. All of a sudden, we put inspectors at the boat ramps, and all of a sudden, that thing is packed.
That's what I was saying.
And so that 2 + 2 = 4, doesn't it? I mean, there was nobody there until all of a sudden there's inspectors at the boat ramps. Now it's packed.
In my 15 years, that's one of the primary places I launch, just because it's easy for me. As long as I got a 4-wheel drive, I can back up there, launch my boat, and away I go. It's been very convenient for me. It was kind of that little gem that I didn't have to fight to get to the ramp.
Sure.
Well, and then the other issue on that is because the Robert Street goes to the north up a hill and around a curve, and it's another one of those roads where it's got a bank on one side instead of a ditch. It goes up a couple of feet, and so now all these boats that are showing up there are parking, and they're blocking traffic. They're parked on both sides of the street. Now, a few years back, we had a problem over on West Shore Drive before the Duck Lake expansion was done.
Yep.
And some of the neighbors down there were complaining too, because it was blocking traffic.
And you guys did pass a no parking zone in that area, on one side,
On
both
one
sides,
side.
As a matter of fact.
On both sides there.
Both sides up
Yep.
by the access.
And that might, because Robert Street was never intended for that kind of, it was intended for McLean. It's public, yes, so anybody can go use it, but it's like all those right-of-ways we have, Manhattan Beach ones are intended for the Manhattan Beach people. That was the original park dedication fee. That's what you did. There's right-of-ways, 66 of them, I think, in town, something like that. There's a ton of them. Most of them aren't conducive to launching a boat there. But there are a few, and right now they're getting abused, overused and abused. And so we need to figure out what to do. I'm not saying I'm going to make a motion right now to close them all, but we need to address this because we're having a huge problem with it.
better.
It's going to get worse.
Yep, okay. I don't know what the next step on that one is, but I think we should all sleep on it. Was that old business or new business?
Whatever you want to call it.
Oh, okay. Well, was there any other old business? Any other new business?
If I can, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to mention that the city council, I'd like to go into closed session with the council prior to the next council meeting in November pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.03 to discuss union, or strategies for union negotiations. So prior to your next council meeting, let's plan on about 5:30.
You got a date? Oh, prior to the next council meeting.
5:30 prior to our next council, I don't know what the date is, that November?
Should be the 9th.
November 9th, yeah. November 9th, that closed session at 5:30 to discuss union negotiation strategies.
Anybody opposed to that? Can you comply with that? Hearing nothing? I think we're there. Any other business that we should address tonight? Then at this time, I would propose that we close the council meeting and enter into a closed session pursuant to MS 13D.05 subdivision 3B, subject to attorney-client privilege to discuss pending litigation. Nope. Council meeting is still open. Should we, what do you want, what?
You'll need a motion to go into
Oh, okay. Need a motion. Thank you, Dave. Did you make that motion, Dave? Motion, Schrupp. Need a second.
I'll second. Brad, any plan to go into open?
Well, I'd be surprised, but we do the settlement offer, there's a chance that we could accept as is, and that would be a final action that we could then, we should report back in open. I don't think that's likely, but
Well, let's just leave the meeting open. We can always adjourn it from there.
I mentioned that for the press, in case they want to hang around.
Well, you know,
back and
we're going to
tell you
serve
if we're gonna go into open again.
them a cup of coffee.
It's up to you. Or you can call.
I didn't get a second on that motion, by the way.
Peacocks and
You made the motion.
I made the motion, he seconded it.
Motion, Heacock, second, Schrupp. All in favor of the closed session? Aye.